Check 1, 2.
I'll turn it out into credit cards legally trying to get.
Did you go out there and say, you can't start till 8?
So I've always heard.
There's nothing worse than
I
just
heard
starting
that,
12
I
minutes.
heard that from the kitchen. The tower mentioned it to me.
Oh, you're back, right?
They start summer camp this week, that's all I
You see that, it's got 2 tons. It gets a lot better towards the
Yeah,
end.
Four cent off meeting last night.
Rita, how we doing here? Are we ready to go? Hello?
June the 7th, 2022 at 9 a.m. Wow. Looking at coaching your commissioner chambers of the town hall, 100 Seabrook, Gulfstream, Florida.
Hey, Chief, we call it the meeting to order. Okay, please rise and pledge the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Rita, would you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Lyons?
Here.
Vice Mayor Stanley?
Here.
Commissioner Orthwell?
Here.
Commissioner Smith?
Here,
Mayor Morgan?
Here.
And also present, Town Manager Dunham, Assistant Town Attorney Nazaro, Police Chief Allen, and myself.
Thank you very much. We've been presented with the minutes from our last meeting on May 13th. Are there any additions, corrections, or comments? Not, is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting.
second,
Ms. Taylor?
Commissioner Lyons.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Stanley.
Yes.
Commissioner Orthline.
Yes.
Commissioner Smith.
Yes.
Mayor Morgan.
Yes. I believe the agenda is as is, no changes. Is that correct?
No changes.
Thank you very much. Okay, our next meeting is July 8th at 9 a.m. for anyone who wishes to attend. Also like to announce that our tentative budget meeting will be September 9th at 5:01 p.m., followed by the final budget meeting on September 21st at 5:01 p.m. Public comment. Anyone wish to speak? If not, thank you very much. Let's move on to the public hearing. Any ex parte communications on this application?
I'm here.
Very good.
Mr. Mayor, I did want to say on behalf of Mark Marsh, he wanted me to announce that he can't be here today because he is, it's work related in another city that he has to attend another meeting. So we do have Tyler Frost here today to make the presentation.
All right, Tyler, would you stand and be sworn?
Swear to tell the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes, ma'am. There we go. There we go.
And for the record, this is 1315 North Ocean Boulevard.
Yes, sir.
All right.
What we are proposing and what we have proposed is a slight remodel of the rear of the property. We are seeking a special exception because we are planning on putting up retention walls to adjust the steep slope of the back of their property. It is east of the CCCL, which is why we are seeking special exception. The current proposal is to remove the existing hardscape that is behind the house and the existing pool, and to put in a new pool in roughly the same location, 15 feet offset from the CCCL, west of the CCCL, and then put in retention walls too, and steps down, forming a kind of lawn terrace in the rear of the property. We're seeking DEP permit for that currently. And then just so you have a sense of that, because plans are confusing sometimes, this is a section cut through the pool showing those site wall, the steps leading down, and then a site wall, and then the existing seawall. And what that will look like from the top view, something like that, with sea grape lining the walls, covering the walls, shielding them. So when you're walking on the beach, you don't see these white walls kind of blaring at you. And what that would look like when you're actually walking behind the property is that. You'll just see one site wall. The property next door has these site walls, so it kind of feels like it belongs. And the rest of the walls are being shaded by sea grape.
Mr. Frost, can you guys go back a slide?
To which one?
Well, it was that one.
This one?
Can you maybe go up here and kind of point out approximately where the CCCL is?
Yes. It would actually be, yes, the CCCL is this line right here.
Okay.
And then the 15-foot offset is right here, right where that corner of the pool hits.
Okay.
Make sure it's completely behind the 15-foot offset.
So the purpose of the special exception is then to do what?
Is to build site walls east of the CCCL.
But the pool's in compliance.
The pool is in
Yeah.
compliance, yes.
And the structure itself.
And the steps, correct, the steps and the retaining walls.
The steps in the retaining walls are what is forcing the special exception.
And those are allowed in our code with a special exception.
Right. No, I just want to get it on record as to
Yeah, of
exactly
course,
what you were
yes.
trying to receive.
Greg, how many So this is like our second application with regard to just tidying up the back of these properties. Obviously, the other one had a security thing, which is not proposed here, which was a bit of a one-off. But the house just to the north has got the same step down setup?
It doesn't have the same exact thing, but
Yeah.
it does have the same visible site walls from the beach. So it's just kind of a continuation of that visual appearance.
Right.
So it's not like everyone else has natural lawns and then we're just putting something that feels out of place. It feels very much in place here.
We don't, if your question is this getting to be a regular thing, we don't have any, anybody else that has mentioned anything.
Because typically we just had the sloped lawn down to the low covered retaining wall, which would be similar to the one to the far east here, right?
Right, I think,
On most of the older homes, I would say.
yeah, didn't this already have some steps there?
It has some
Or
steps
some kind of a
currently,
structure
yeah.
there?
So that bottom step, we're kind of just refinishing it. But it exists currently. That deck that you see leading out, kind of a dune crossover, exists currently.
Right.
But the slope of the property is very steep and we're trying to ease access to use to the beach so the client can very easily walk down and actually utilize the backyard, because currently it's a steep slope. So what these retaining walls are aiming to do is to create kind of this lawn terrace where you can put dining chairs there. We're giving them more usable space in their backyard to make their backyard not just, if you look at what it currently is, it's just, they couldn't use their lawn, so it's all just a patio. And that patio, that hardscape is what we're aiming to get rid of, part of this proposal. I go up here. No trees are being removed as well from this project, but currently their backyard, all of that red hatch is hardscape. And that was the only real usable area in their backyard, was a paved hardscape area.
What percentage of that hardscape do you think you're removing?
That, all of the red.
All of it.
Almost
All of it.
all of it, yes.
Oh, that's right. The visual now is just grass around
It's
the
just,
pool.
it's just
Yeah.
the pool. The pool's almost sitting exactly where it is, but it is a new pool.
Yeah.
But it is just pool surrounded by grass at the moment.
I think it's a more attractive look.
Yeah, I do. too.
Frankly, it's a more natural look.
Yeah,
Aesthetically, much more pleasing viewing it toward the west.
And it improves the percolation of the water into the ground.
Yeah, it's great.
Any questions?
Nope.
No, is there a motion?
Got what, 3 motions?
Mm-hmm.
So in regard to the application, we've got a motion to approve the special exception to permit the construction of retaining walls and steps that will be constructed east of the 1978 coastal construction setback.
Second.
Ms. Taylor?
Commissioner Lyons?
Yes.
Commissioner Stanley?
Yes.
Commissioner Ortline? Yes. Commissioner Smith?
Yes.
Mayor Morgan?
Yes.
Second motion is motion to approve a level 3 architectural site plan review to allow the demolition of the existing swimming pool and construction of a new pool and spa at approximately the same location with retaining walls and steps at the east end of the pool that will be constructed east of the 1978 coastal construction setback line.
Second.
Ms. Taylor?
Yes.
Okay. Commissioner Stanley?
Yes.
Commissioner Ortline?
Yes.
Commissioner Smith?
Yes.
Mayor Morgan?
Yes. It's like we combined 2 motions in that second one. So we're good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good job.
Now let's move on to town managers' reports. Mr. Dunham.
Okay, how many years have we let off with utility undergrounding? But it is actually coming to an end. So the DOT finally had their pre-construction meeting. Anthony did attend that, talked about the same thing for about the 5th time, right? With the DOT. And anyway, so that was done. They signed off on it. And so the company that took down all the rest of the core area will begin probably sometime like around Wednesday next week on A1A. And that's all that's left.
And that'll complete the project.
Correct. Now that may, I mean, I was very pleased with the work they did in the core. mainly because they didn't hit any of our, and no disruption to our water mains, which they easily could have done because the poles were right next to them. But because we're going to have maintenance of traffic issues out here, I would predict that it would probably take, once they start, about a week to get.
That's
it
great.
done.
Very good news. Now let's move on to feral cats.
Okay, so what the staff has done, we've reached out to Mr. Snavely and actually Mrs. Kennemer. They gave us some names of potential hosts for the trapping in their yard. And so we'll be reaching out to those people. We've also reached out to the contractor who has performed these services in the town before. And I think you had a conversation with her, right?
Yeah, it's been a number of years, but she worked over here on the Barrier Island for us. So we wanted to continue that relationship. I reached out and asked for some pricing and some other information. I'm just waiting to hear back from her.
All right, very good. That's moving forward.
Yes.
The Delray Beach Building Department contract.
We're gonna let Trey kind of start out on this one, and then we'll have more discussion on it.
So some of you may know, or maybe this is something that you're hearing for the first time, but we have an issue with the city of Delray Beach as it relates to our interlocal agreement for processing building permits. Apparently their city attorney looked into the interlocal agreement and discovered it did not cover any engineering work, floodplain review, or landscaping. This has stalled Carrie Glickstein's project along with some other projects in town, as Delray has done a full stop now that they're aware that their staff lacks the authority to do this review. It appears that this additional review that Delray was performing for the town came about by way of an internal city staff memo or similar document that was signed off by a Delray city official that expanded the scope of our interlocal agreement with the city to include these engineering and related items. But that official did not have the authority to do that. It needed to be brought to the city commission for approval, which was never done. That was about 2011. So we're talking about over a decade of this relationship continuing. And at this point, like I said, they stopped all engineering, floodplain, and landscaping review a few weeks ago. So that kind of left us in a lurch. It's become quite the quagmire. Just to sort of update you on what we're doing to work around that is we're working with our engineers who are doing the engineering review. So Baxter and Woodman are doing the engineering review for Carrie Glickstein's project, the 588 Banyan. The city stopped doing all of that work and returned it to the very beginning. So we sent that over to her as well, and some other projects that need engineering review, not just structural review under the Florida Building Code. We also are working with Dave Bodker to do landscape review because Baxter Woodman doesn't have a landscape architect on staff. So he's agreed to do some plan review for us as well. So that's how we're working today to make sure that these projects aren't stalled indefinitely until we have a fix. As it relates to continuing our relationship with the city, it is quite the quagmire. For example, one of the issues is that the town has different standards for drainage, which is part of their engineering review. So one of the fixes would be to adopt Delray standards so their staff can review them consistent with their review of what the city requires. In addition, Delray's building department is going digital, and as part of that updated process, the city manager sent us a letter explaining what the new process would be and some additional costs that the town would have to pay directly, such as travel time for their employees to perform inspections in Gulfstream. And we'd have to pay for the staff time if we were to reach out to ask for assistance with the navigation of the digital system. It would kind of seem to make sense that these fees would already be taken care of by the permitting fee charged to contractors, but I think they're just trying to recoup some of their expenses. And from a meeting that we had on May 20th with the Development Services Director, Carrie Glickstein, the city attorney, and Steve Tobias, their building official, myself, Greg, and Rebecca, it seems that the constituents are very upset about the amount of time that it's taking the city to process their permits. So why are they also processing Gulfstream's permits? So we're sort of dealing with that political environment as well. So with all of that in the background, the interlocal agreement, if we want to continue with Delray Beach, would need to be amended. That would require negotiating with the city attorney, figuring out the language that's acceptable to them, bring it to the town commission for approval, and then also get the city to approve it, which would include the digital plan review and extra costs that would be part of that. But even if we wanted to continue that, our meeting with city staff, they really couldn't guarantee that the city commission would be okay moving forward, continuing the relationship. So we just wanted to update you on that, as this is kind of a current situation that's infecting all of the buildings in town and what we've been doing since we've got that notice. So obviously I've covered the initial continuing the relationship with Delray. We also went out to bid, sent out a request for proposals for third-party plan review. We got those responses back on Wednesday. We're working very fast on trying to remedy this and provide you with some options. So we got 3 responses to that, and we're currently reviewing them. And we also had a meeting with the city manager of Highland Beach, who indicated that that was the first thing he did when he came on 5 years ago. His commission wanted him to bring the building department in-house, and they've apparently been doing a very good job, a very positive response from him. Greg can elaborate a little bit on that, but they would be happy to enter into an interlocal agreement with us. Again, this is just manager to manager, but I guess the city manager maybe spoke to the mayor and mentioned that that was something they would entertain. Given our permit volume, they felt like they could service us. They have 5 staff members, an office manager, code enforcement officer, 2 permit technicians, a planner, in addition to their building official. They've been doing it, in-house for the 5 or so years that he's been there, with very positive response there. We asked what the permit turnaround time was, and he said that it would be 10 days for some regular processing, like if there are no sort of missing documents or hiccups, which I think we were all kind of shocked that was the quickness, and they were able to do it. They do work with a third party to help supplement. I believe it's called CAP, who does some supplemental services for them. But one of the things that he mentions is, Highland Beach has a certain level of expectation of that sort of concierge service that you would be getting. So that's what they aim to deliver to their residents. And, in speaking with staff here, we think that would be consistent with how we would want a building department to operate that was servicing Gulfstream. So with that, I don't know if we have any comments, or if Greg or Rebecca would like to add anything.
Did you get any idea on the costs that Highland Beach would require?
They just indicated that they would be using their existing fee schedule, which is come up to offset the costs of operating the department. So he did not indicate that at this time. I mean, again, this is just very preliminary discussions, that there would be any additional costs that they'd be looking to recoup as part of servicing the town.
So the fees charged to the Highland Beach residents would be the same ones charged to Gulfstream?
That is what he indicated in our meeting. Yes, sir.
What is their, we talked about this for a few hours a couple weeks ago, but what, not about Highland Beach, but about the whole process. Does the Highland Beach has a very high percentage, though, of non-single family interior condo renovation permits. So they're gonna, I know they're a single family there on the beach. We know that as you drive down, and then some on the little bit on the west side. Some of it's attached housing product. I mean, are they gonna, their 10-day turnaround's got to be based on I'm redoing my kitchen.
I'm sure
Bathrooms in a multi-family unit, which we've struggled with here. I'm not minimizing that. So, but so I guess my question would be, which they can probably handle it with, we have a lot of oversight on that, is, these larger single family renovations with our
a very strict code.
And we talked about that to some degree. I guess Wednesday when we were up there. Their building official, I think, was on vacation. And so as we review these 3 proposals that we got for third party, my plan is to go back to Highland Beach and I've already talked to the manager about this when their building official is back in town, and have a discussion like you're talking about, get more into the weeds.
Nuts and bolts, yeah.
But we did talk about, our typical, I mean, we have between 250 or 300 permits a year. And how many houses are we
Yeah.
really talking about, so.
Especially now, yeah.
Right. And so, 90, I don't know what the percentage is, but we've got 3 or 4 houses that are under construction right now. And some of them will be for a couple of years. So, but, I think our permitting characteristics will pretty much remain the same for the next several years. And so we did discuss that, and he seemed very confident that would not interrupt their process. The fact that, we do have houses, large houses that are part of our permit procedure.
Another option is going full third party. And you explored that with Ocean Ridge and their experience, I believe.
Yeah, Ocean Ridge used to be third party, and then they ran into some issues in speaking with Tracy, their manager. When I was in I can't remember what we did when I was in Ocean Ridge, but when I was in Manalapan, we had a building official, and then he retired, and then we went third party. But we all also did the zoning there, but the third party, I think it was Hybrid, and I think Hybrid still gives you some service, supplements your staff. So I think the one thing that would bother me in turn, and I think Tracy would agree with me, is with third parties, sometimes you tend to get inconsistent inspections. You might have an inspector that comes in there and I mean, every I must be dotted, T crossed before he approves it. And then you'll have others that, well, that's not a big deal. And so I know that's what Tracy said to me. And I can't remember that far back in when I was in Manalapan, but we did use a third party for several years. I think they actually still do. So with Highland Beach, I mean, I know Marshall very well, and I'm confident that what he tells me is, what happens there. He's not sugarcoating it.
And there's a degree of urgency to this, is there not?
Well, we have 8 or 9 projects that are in the queue right now in Delray, and Mr. Nazaro spoke about some of those. And we're having to use our town engineers to provide that engineering review at this point in time. And they're very busy working on our CIP project and countless other projects. And this is not really what they do, but they agreed to do it for us. And I'll say this on behalf of our Baxter Woodman, the contractor at the Davis House said that they definitely are more thorough than Delray Beach has been in their engineering reviews.
But the Delray Beach letter that we received had a deadline.
It does because
Right.
they're moving to a digital system, so they want to start that process. So they did give us a deadline. In addition to, like the town manager said, we are kind of working without, with a Band-Aid on with working with Baxter Woodman. Although they're very good, that's we want to move on to making a decision whether we want to continue with Delray, move to a third party, or start negotiations with Highland
Yeah, we
Beach.
need to do something because I mean, the last week, since Baxter and Woodman agreed to do this, I mean, we're on the phone every day with contractors and we're having to deal. That it's just convoluted as to how we have to do this to finally get Delray to actually give the permit out. We got to have a letter from the town, the Baxter Woodman and or the landscape architect has to write us a letter signing off on their review. Then we got to write a letter to Delray Beach. So we've been,
Well,
every day we're on the
the
phone.
number one thing that we talked about, other than was talking to staff about this, was which again, I think he came up with the Highland Beach option, was that regardless of time, why is my permit taking so long?
Right.
We've done everything correctly. Was again, the culture of the whole process, which you mentioned. You don't want to end up in a situation, which I think you're seeking this resolve, where, everyone's upset. It reflects poorly on the town, reflects poorly on the staff, and you all do a tremendous job, and everyone's unhappy, with regard to what they have to do because the permits are not just, remember, I want to build a new house or redo my house. Some of these permits are related where, on the ocean, stuff just has to be done. Some of it's permitted, requires permits for maintenance. Windows, and then also we have storm damage, which hopefully we won't have one this year, and some of that stuff requires permits. So we kind of went down the list and we're like, yeah, it's but the number one thing was, with the concierge service you mentioned, we just don't want and Delray, by and large, did a pretty good job other than the time with the inspections and the flow once it got going. It's just not to have a situation where, everyone's unhappy, which I think you're seeking resolve.
So what is your recommendation? What do you ask the commission to do?
Well, we'd like to, of course, we want to review the proposals that we get, and I'd like to go back to Highland Beach to talk to them one more time, the manager and the building official. One point that I wanted to add into this equation about the timely service and the need for timely service with some of our projects is now you have the supply chain issue going on. And so these contractors, for instance, on the Davis house, they're going to start pilings on Monday because they got in the queue for concrete months ago. And if we're not able to sign off on their engineering, or get that permit from Delray, then they're going to have to go to the back of the line again, and that's probably going to delay them 2 months. And so, that's why it's important to get timely inspections.
Can you come back with a recommendation at the next meeting?
I think so.
We're not getting it done sooner.
Yeah.
You get it done soon?
So given the need to, so for example, if we decide that, in meeting with the Highland Beach building official, that's something that we want to pursue, that's still going to be subject to the approval by their own elected officials. So I don't know what the time frame is going to be, but it may be beneficial to have a special meeting to iron out some of those details, or if the town manager decides that's the way he wants to go, and we start negotiating with Highland Beach to have an interlocal agreement brought before the town commission at a special meeting. And then, in the event that that's not acceptable or the elected officials in Highland Beach don't agree, we would still be able to have a third-party plan review because we do have some proposals. So we would have that kind of as a backup. So I would sort of recommend to the manager that we pursue it in that fashion and hopefully do have a special meeting.
Because if, for instance, if we were to work something out with Highland Beach, we would really need to approve it before it goes before their town commission. Now I think they meet twice a month. And so they have their last meeting, excuse me, Tuesday of this week. So they would have another meeting in 2 weeks from Tuesday. So my plan would be to try to give you guys a recommendation next week. If we can have a special meeting, and then it would go to them the following week.
Tell me,
Because we still have to create an interlocal agreement.
if somebody submits their building plans, et cetera, they're ready to go to Delray tomorrow, well, not tomorrow, today, what happens? I'm
Well,
gonna get that question from someone.
who might that be? So, I mean, that's a good question, but I mean, Delray has already agreed to.
Delray has agreed to continue processing all the
And
permits
then
that
you
have
go
been
to Baxter
applied.
for the engineer.
Correct, but I mean,
And just so a sense of how urgent it is this a temporary fix,
it's
manageable? It's working okay, it's not perfect.
yeah,
I
it's
understand that.
okay, but it's not something that I would want.
No,
to
no, I
continue.
understand, but I mean, I don't want to rush into a decision and have to say a year later, oh,
Oh, it's not
whoops,
working out.
it's not working out. I mean, so I want you to have enough time to vet this thing and figure it out. On the other hand, I don't want to delay it unnecessarily either, so.
I mean, can you really get the details in a week? Have a special meeting, that seems.
It may be beneficial to have a discussion with the manager. Their meeting is the 21st. Get an idea if flush everything out.
Interested in
Mhm.
doing it. Make sure the commission is on board at Highland. But yeah, if you could bring it to us as soon as possible, great, but I don't know that I would rush it.
Mayor,
Next week.
could authorize the town manager to indicate that the commission is seriously entertaining going to them, so then their commissioners could.
Yes, I think we're probably all in agreement based on your recommendation that that's the first path forward.
Okay.
Good.
And we still have to review the third-party proposals that we received. And I'll just say one more thing. The third party that supports the Highland Beach staff is one of them that submitted a proposal to us. So.
All right, good. Now let's move on then, as part and parcel, of that, frankly, the CIP update on our phase 1 and 2.
Okay, so we haven't really talked about this much lately in terms of the scheduling of this project that we're doing in the core area. So I'm not going to get into the weeds of this, but rather just summarize for you the schedule. Let's see. And of course, I forgot to bring in a map that I wanted to pass out to you, but I don't think I really need it. So, of course, the project description really and the limits of the improvements are to occur in the rights of way within the core area in 2 phases, if you remember the 2 phases. So phase 1 will consist of Polo Drive, right way, Old School, Banyan Road, west of Gulfstream Road, Palm Way, Middle Road, west of Polo, and Gulfview Drive, west of Polo. And I'll get into the scheduling of this here in a second. So phase 2 then would be Gulfstream Road, Bermuda Lane, Oleander, Sea Road, west of Bermuda Lane, Banyan Road, east of Gulfstream Road, Lakeview Drive, Middle Road, and Gulfview Drive, east of Polo, and then the alley between Polo and Gulfstream Road. So the scope, of course, you already know this, includes water main improvements. And let me take a step back. We had a kickoff meeting with Baxter and Woodman on May 12th. And to kind of solidify this scheduling, but their work actually started in February with data collection, which includes surveying, geotechnical, utility coordination, field verification of utilities, and a water meter study. So they're doing that right now. And so a couple things in that meeting, the town requested fire hydrants at the ends of each water main for flushing purposes. And then to add intermediate valves on long runs of water main between intersections. Excuse me, again, approximately 4 or 5 properties between the valves. Now that's become an issue lately because we've had a couple of water main breaks and some of the valves are not working. And so what that means, it's, you know, we can't isolate the break like we should be able to do. We've done a great job, thanks to Anthony and Wayne, and then our contractor. We had a major one over there in front of the Davis house. So anyway, that's one thing that we especially want them to cover. Let's see. Yes. What? Oh, thank you. Okay, so that's water main improvements, then of course stormwater improvements. Now, for a year, our engineers have been laboring under the assumption, because we looked in minutes and the conversation in the commission chamber that we had with the Little Club with respect to using one of the lakes for us to be able to detain water and expand one of the lakes so we could detain water before it goes into the intercoastal. And the reason we're needing to do that is the South Florida Water Management District really would not entertain us just putting new water straight into the intercoastal from a catch basin without it having water quality. And so that was the reason that we went to the Little Club to look at perhaps using one of their lakes. And so we felt like we had identified a lake that would not impact golf play. And in fact, in the meeting, we had responses from the Little Club that said that they would like to work with us on that. And really, so we got the impression that we should continue laboring under the assumption that we could use that lake as part of our drainage improvements. But recently, in meeting with the Little Club, they've expressed the need for them to use a golf course architect and their engineers to review this. So they were not ready to sign off on this at that point in time. This is what, just 2 or 3 weeks ago?
Correct.
And so we were told by the Little Club that this review by the engineers wouldn't even take place for 2 or 3 months. And so the schedule that we've got really can't wait 2 or 3 months to see if that would be a viable option for us to use based on a review by their engineer. Again, we have been laboring under the assumption for a year that we could use this lake.
Well, not just you. They spoke before the commission in June of 2021, 1 year ago this month, and made the statements that they were in agreement with that, and that the pond that was selected would be the perfect place to do it without interfering with golf play. I believe that's my recollection, and I assume you were all here as well. Our engineers have moved forward, surveyed, conducted all of the engineering work necessary to include that in our CIP plan.
And worked with the South Florida Water Management District on a number of occasions, explaining this project and the details using this lake. And South Florida has basically said, yeah, we would be good with that as long as we get the water quality.
And where is Baxter Woodman now?
Okay, so according to this schedule, they will be here in July to present a draft design. Now, again, it's a draft design, and Beyond that, we'll still get 60%, let's see, 60% design phase, then a 90%, and then 100% design phase, which would be in 2023, March and April. So that's the amount of time that they're going to need to complete this design. And so, I mean, if we interject 2 or 3 months waiting on an engineer from Little Club to give us their opinions before they would agree to use this lake, I mean, that's going to push the schedule.
They won't
way
let
back.
our engineers talk to them about this. They want their own golf course. I mean, how much?
No, they agreed
They agreed
to have our engineers talk to their engineers, but I don't really remember that they didn't really come to any kind of consensus because the engineer has not done the assessment like ours has, and because of his scheduling, he would not be able to do that for 2 or 3 months.
And you'll recall that we retained Baxter Woodman to do a drainage assessment.
Yes.
Because it was so important. That's part of the main reason we're redoing the roads in town is to eliminate the flooding that's been occurring for decades. And what they came back with was, and you'll remember the meeting, we cannot increase the volume of water into the intracoastal. We can't just expand the lines, add pumps, and just pump it in the intracoastal. It must be clean, purified. They then looked at possibly moving to the big golf club, but that is a far run to the south down Polo Road. The one that is closest, obviously, was the Little Club. We already have a pipe going to the Little Club, and we already have an agreement with the Little Club to accept our drainage water there into these ponds. And for that reason, the engineers came up with a pond that could be expanded to purify the additional water, removing it from the roads and Gulfstream, and thus meet the requirements of the Army Corps and the South Florida Water Management, which they did. And now we're getting the step back from the Little Club. So I think we just wanted to bring the commission up to speed with where we are
So
on those negotiations.
tell me, this is a case A. Case A, we proceed with our existing schedule. Just assume that they're going to approve it. In the event that they don't approve it, can we force them to accept it?
And B.
I mean, because we've had a nice business-like discussion, and now they're dragging their feet. So what rights does the town have with regard to requiring either of these two clubs to retain the water?
Well, the process.
That's something that we're looking into.
Okay, I think we just wanted to bring everyone up.
Well,
Right.
are we gonna delay the process because of this? That's my question.
Okay, so back to the schedule, again, for the July meeting, we have on the schedule that they would be bringing the preliminary design report or the draft to the town commission. Then moving on from that, the 60% design would be presented to the town commission in December. So look at the work. I mean, we're talking between July and December that they'll have. It'll take that long to have 60% design phase completed, and so then they have a 90% design completion date, and that is in February and March.
Can we ask them, I understand there's a lot to be designed. This retention pond is some percentage of that. But it's not 90%, it's not 80%, it's probably 10%. Can't they do all that other work? I just hate to see it delayed because this CIP plan is, it's taking a long time. I just want to be sure I have an opportunity to enjoy it. I mean, but I'm impatient, so I'll admit that.
I mean, we can have that discussion. We can have that discussion in July when they come. I mean, I would recommend that they continue on the course that they're following, at least until July. And then perhaps between now and July, we'll have more.
We'll be speaking with the little club, and we're having this matter reviewed by others who can advise us on our rights with respect to.
I mean, there is a plan B that we've been talking about. It involves what are called the exfiltration trenches. But what they do is mitigate the water from gathering there at the low point of Polo and Old School. And so those trenches would be all over town. In other words, what they would do is try to stop the water from where that's the lowest point. All the water goes that way. So we'd have to have these exfiltration trenches all throughout the town, and they would either need to be on town property or in rights of ways. And these trenches are rather large, so our rights of way are full of other utilities, and so that
Could be very expensive, I imagine.
Yeah, well, we didn't get into the cost yet.
It sounds like a lot of work.
So, okay.
Okay. Yep. All right, let's, is that it for the CIP?
Yes.
All right, let's move on then to the auto dealership on the Plaza Solai.
Thank you, Mayor. So just by way of an update, this is again the rezoning in Delray Beach that's directly west of the Place Soleil neighborhood on some vacant lots. They're seeking to rezone from general commercial to automotive commercial and build a car dealership there. So we've, excuse me, had a lot of discussions. We've had a few discussions in the last month since this happened. Just as recently as the first, I got an email from the Developers Council saying we wanted to let you know that we had a conference call with the client to discuss the requests, because as you recall, we worked with the HOA president to, instead of fighting this tooth and nail at the Planning and Zoning Board meeting and the City Council meeting, we just wanted some reasonable accommodations for our residents, buffering walls, dealing with sound and lights, your typical nuisance factors and issues that you're going to deal with a large dealership right next to a single family residential. And they said they were given the green light to agree to certain terms with some modifications. They're drafting up a letter now based on that conversation in hopes of resolving them in advance of the Planning and Zoning meeting on June 20th. So I called her this week and I said, hey, can you just let me know maybe what the specific ones that you're in agreement are, so I can just have any idea and update my update Gulfstream about where we are. I won't hold you to anything. Just let me know anything about where you are. And she said, well, I'll have to reach out to the client. I'm not really sure. And I've heard nothing from her. Simultaneously, you gave me the go-ahead to work with Marty Miner, our planner, to put together an opposition to present to the June 20th Planning and Zoning meeting. So I worked with him, and then I got a call from him a few days ago that he was conflicted out because one of his partners works, I guess, for the developer in some way. So I asked him if he knew anyone that we could work with. I know someone that I've worked with and that has experience from some other work in some other municipalities. Nilsa Zacharias, I think she worked with, I don't know if she overlapped Greg at the City of Palm Beach Gardens. So she has 23 years of architectural and planning experience. She owns her own firm. She's been there for 13 years. Her specialties are land use planning, annexation, feasibility studies, sustainable master plans, urban design. So she's a planner and has put together papers like this before. And she said she wouldn't have a conflict because what she does is she typically just represents municipalities. So she's worked with the Village of Tequesta, Manalapan, Lake Worth, North Palm Beach, Juno Beach, Vero Beach. So some other cities like that.
Excuse me, we've got a week to get this put together.
Yes.
It has to be submitted prior to the meeting.
That's right. So I told her that we are on a deadline and she said absolutely she can put it through. So I forwarded her all the materials because we do have all the application materials and everything. And that's something that she's familiar with. So, you know,
At the last meeting, we instructed you to pursue it with every degree of alacrity and
which
aggressiveness.
wh-
Right. So you want to get that planning review done. And then also a summary of what happened at Gunther Volvo. So that reminding the commission what they heard of the last auto dealership presentation and how reasonable our requests are, just matching that which was done at Gunther Volvo. Then we'll need to have a presence at the meeting as well. Good.
thank you.
Okay. Little Club Road.
Yes, your direction was to get with our town engineers to begin to assess costs and what would need to be done to bring Little Club Road up to acceptable conditions for a public road. And one of those conditions before you go anywhere is that a public road would be required to have a turnaround at the end of the road necessary or such that a fire truck, a 60-foot fire truck could turn around without having to back up. And so it would have to be basically in that area where casitas start. In that general area, but you had, I mean, there's in the Blue Water Cove, I mean, they're having to provide those in that development. And so we would have to do the same thing. Problem is our engineers for the past week have been very busy reviewing engineering applications that are in the queue in Delray Beach, and so they've really not been able to address that yet.
And also evaluating the CIP. The Little Club has indicated that they're reserving their agreement to let us use their pond for drainage.
So that's
What's the radius on that? Not that we're planners.
I'm not
Is there room on
I'm
that?
not sure,
Yeah, so it's
but
it's big.
yeah, I think it would they'd probably take out a few parking spaces.
Yeah, I got it. Okay.
By the way, part of the, I think, motivation that we're bringing up this subject was the appearance of that entrance. And I hadn't really paid much attention, so when I was walking, I stopped and looked at it. And Joan, you pointed out, the issue of the hedges. Fortunately, they've started to cut them back.
They did.
But on the corner of St. Andrews, which would be, get this right, southeast corner, there's a bunch of utility boxes, some just ugly stuff. And the hedges and that whole, I mean, it's a St. Andrews issue, and I think that we need to, I mean, I'll call my brother-in-law and ask him to address it, but
Well, that's where the poles come out, right?
Mhm.
And we have a
so when
plan
you-
for that.
You're talking about
no, when
on
you
St.
drive
Andrews
in to
property.
the right side.
On the right side?
Yeah.
On the north side?
On the north side, yes.
Northwest side,
I was trying to do. a
northwest
basic
corner,
mistake.
the opposite side of the
But in any
tennis
case,
courts.
As long as everybody knows what I'm talking about, it's awful. And I don't know, do you know what all those boxes are?
I think some of it's related to sewer because that's Boynton Beach facilities. And then I think there's a water interconnect there.
But it's, it's ugly. Even after you put a new road, it's still gonna be ugly.
But all those facilities are on St. Andrews property.
Yeah, I think that some of these, the condos, the two clubs, they can make a better effort on their, before we spend a lot of money fixing their road.
I
That's
agree
my
with
view.
that.
Yeah, that's St. Andrews,
That's St. Andrews.
Boynton area.
Correct.
Right.
We don't have the
Well, I think, you know,
authority, but
we recently were responsive to the residents at St. Andrews and the pickleball. And while, you know, they're not technically part of us, I would expect, you know,
you're absolutely right.
you know, we're asking Delray to, you know, be sensitive to our needs. We hopefully are sensitive to their needs. You know, so.
You know, sometimes I don't think people realize what it looks like. I mean, they get so used
Yeah,
to
yeah.
every
I hadn't
day like
noticed
that.
Until you,
everything until you
Yeah.
point it out. And I think a lot of the clubs are ready to work with the town. I mean, I hope they would be.
I'll tell you
Thank
what,
you.
I'll follow up on St. Andrews.
Yeah.
Okay.
How many property owners are there again on the road? 3? The little club owns part of the road,
Little Club.
Hillside House.
and St.
and they're all tentatively willing to deed their property rights to us, Trey?
Tentatively, yes.
Okay.
You know, with the expense carrying.
I'll guarantee you,
Yeah,
I've had.
We're gonna own it, yes.
I've had conversations with all of those 3, so unofficial, and it's like, "Oh, you guys are gonna take this road?" I mean, they don't
Oh, okay.
want to have anything to do with it.
Oh, yeah, that's true. I think it's important, the maintenance though of the maintenance of the road, but also the vegetation. I think
Well,
we
we
need some
talked about-
kind of promise that they're going to take care of. If not, could be our responsibility to take care of the vegetation.
You're absolutely right.
I mean,
I've talked
we
about
have
it as well, and
to.
there's obvious to me bickering amongst the 3.
Oh, okay,
as to
good.
who
So,
has
so
been
Mr. Naz-
maintaining their sections.
Yeah.
And,
So
you're
Mr. Nazaro and I, we had a conversation about those bushes.
Yeah,
It's on a private road and they're growing through
yeah.
to the, and so the owners of the private road, correct me if I'm wrong, have the authority to go trim it if they want to. I mean, Little Club or Hillside or St.
Is it
Andrews.
St. Andrews on that one side? Is that, or is it?
Yeah, they own the first
They own
part.
the
They own
They
the
own the
first.
first
By
part.
the
North
tennis
side.
court.
Because it almost has to be moved. I mean, I don't want it to be moved.
Well, you have St. Andrews Club, then you have the St. Andrews Condominium
Right.
Association. So
Okay.
Yeah, there's two.
separate responsibilities.
Got it.
Now, if it becomes private, then we can go down in public. I'm sorry, it becomes public, then we can go down and trim.
Well, yeah, but do we want to get more into all this?
Well, I mean, we don't have to. I mean, we can, but if it's coming out onto our public, I mean, we have to do that all over the core. I mean, we always first get the resident to do it. If they don't do it, then we remind them that they need to keep them.
But the reason bringing it up again is it's put on the back shelf. We have too much going on with our engineers
Yeah,
now,
no, I get it.
trying to address some of the difficulties of the CIP. Little Club Road, which was probably going to move forward in the next few months, is unlikely to meet that deadline. Let's move on. The ARPB meeting will be June 23rd at 8:30 a.m. for anyone who wishes to attend. Mr. Dunham, back at you for finance.
Yes, I mean, there's really nothing remarkable about this report other than surprise, surprise, fuel costs are exceeding budgeted allowances and but at the same time, fuel tax revenues are also exceeding budgeted amounts. This is 66% of our budget.
Any questions on budget, including water budget? If not, thank you. Chief, police report.
Request that the report be accepted as submitted. Couple things I'd like to just make you aware, we did have an attempted theft of a vehicle, Porsche. However, the neighbor came out and saw the guy getting in the car and said, "What are you doing?" And then the guy turned around 2 feet down the road and got back in another car and they took off. There was about a 20-minute delay before we ever got the call, so that didn't help us by any means. And we tried to work some leads on it, it didn't really come up with nothing. But I guess the word is out there, Brian, that, we're watching. It's a good thing. Another thing we've been kind of busy on this month was since the shooting in Texas and the school. We've been beefed up our patrol at the school here locally. We also are looking into replacing some of our gear, ballistic gear, and we're trying to get some prices on it right now. Stuff is not very cheap, we can tell you. It's been think we've been kind of busy this month, construction. A lot of big trucks in and out. Spent a lot of time in the road, they're getting them in, getting ready. The job at the end of Perry O'Neill's old house on the end of Mandan, they put over 100 truckloads of fill in that time. So that was 100 trucks at least. So it's been a little hectic keeping them straight and trying to keep the roads from getting tore up and everything. So far, it's worked pretty good. So.
Very good.
So,
Questions? If not, thank you, Chief. Let's move on to ordinance 22/5. Ms. Taylor, this is brought to us for second reading.
This is an ordinance of the Town Commission of the Town of Gulfstream, Palm Beach County, Florida, amending the Town Code of Ordinances at Chapter 70, Gulfstream Design Manual, Articles 4, Site Development Regulations, removing the redundant section 70-81, Summary of Site Development Regulations in its entirety, providing for severability, providing for repeal of ordinances in conflict, providing for codification, providing an effective date. And it was passed on first reading the 13th day of May, 2022, and is presented on second and final reading for adoption this 10th day of June, 2022.
Thank you. Ordinance 22/5 has been brought to us on second reading. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve?
Second.
Ms. Taylor?
Commissioner Lyons,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Stanley,
Yes.
Commissioner Orthwyne,
Yes.
Commissioner Smith,
Yes.
Mayor Morgan.
Yes. All right, and finally, we have before us the resume and request by Michael Green to serve as an alternate member of the ARPB. I've spoken with him. He seems very qualified, very interested, and I stressed to him the need to be at summer meetings, and he indicated that he recognized the need for that and was willing to do it. Yeah, he seems very qualified, nice guy. I think he'd make a good addition to the ARPB as an alternate member.
I agree.
If everyone else agrees, is there a motion to approve?
I'll move to appoint Michael Green to the alternate position of the ARPB for a 3-year term.
Second?
Ms. Taylor?
Commissioner Lyons,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Stanley,
Yes.
Commissioner Orthwyne,
Yes.
Commissioner Smith,
Yes.
Mayor Morgan.
Yes. Any other items, comments for the good of the order?
I have two quick subjects. One is initiative we took, I don't know, 3 or 4 months ago with regard to the threat of big homes being built in the core district. And we introduced a new code that basically said that a home couldn't be too dissimilar to the adjacent properties, if that's a good summary. But I think, as I recall, we were going to investigate further other changes in our code to try to maintain the understated, maintain the streetscape we have today, particularly on Polo and Gulfstream. You walk down the street and you have a lot of shade, and you don't see a lot of cement, a lot of building, because many of the homes are understated and many of the homes are 1 story. And I think that we need to preserve that, because this town will look very different. The core district will look very different if we don't get in front of it. So I don't know whether we want to engage Marty Minor, but I think we should look at every option, including, which I brought up in the past. I'm not recommending that we look at FAR as relates to the core district. Create incentives for people to keep the houses smaller, particularly 1 story, so they're not imposing on their neighbors. So I know you have a lot on your docket, but over the next 3 or 4 months, I'd like to hear more about what we might want to do.
I think streetscape is a big word here, because I think that's a lot of the whole, not so much CFAR. I mean, I'm not against any of it. But the streetscape is a huge part of it because you do have shade and trees coming over. And it's very pretty. And now we have our power lines down. We don't have to chop everything to death.
Right.
So I think streetscape is a good word.
Yeah. When we last discussed this, and a lot has transpired since then on other matters, but this is a very important one. And maybe your suggestion of bringing in urban design to give us some guidance is a good one. My recollection is that, Joan, you had a pretty good view of this, which is let's encourage the single story homes as opposed to burdening the second story home. Let's encourage not smaller necessarily, but lower homes with respect to setbacks, FAR. We have done that to a certain extent. We've tinkered with this over the last 4 or 5 years. But perhaps bringing in urban design to take a more thorough evaluation of it with the goal of preserving that streetscape. See what they recommend.
I mean, a great example is your neighbor and the one-story house that was built right next to you.
I wouldn't even know there was a new house.
Yeah, I
And when
agree
you
with
walk
that.
down the street, you can tell it's a new house, but it doesn't impact you like, wow, that's too big. And, we know there are many houses that were built in the last 10 years. People would say, wow, that's too big.
I think the block style too, some of the blockier homes that you start, a lot has to do with the architecture. We talked about that too. There's subtle architecture and kind of understated, and then there's in your face architecture. I want to be important architecture.
Remember that.
I'm
That's
kidding.
We'll prohibit in your face architecture.
Block. How about block architecture, blocky homes?
All right, so we'll reach out to Marty Minor
Okay.
and have him, because you guys are very busy. And we have been discussing this. This issue has not been ignored.
So the second subject,
Yes.
did I interrupt you?
No.
Is the follow through. So we approve a house, we approve the landscaping. And recently, I, as a practice, always listen to the ARPB meetings just to get some flavor for their perspective on applications that we're going to review. And a subject that was discussed there was not discussed here today because it didn't have to come before us. But it was a house on Polo, a house I know very well because I've been at the property hundreds of times. That was sold recently, and I heard this noise. I happened to be walking, and long story short, they took down 7 wild palms. And we can't require somebody to follow certain landscaping and then just let them take it down afterwards. So they came back before the ARPB. And I know I'm a little strict on this discussion point, but they're putting back something that's not comparable. And these wild palms, as we all know, are iconic in this part of Florida. And back on Streetscape, they're going to put in some coconut palms. The coconut palms I have 4 or 5 coconut palms. I have 3 wild palms. They're very different. And I like that contrast. And I hate to see that continue in our town.
I thought they were going to be required to replace
And so
those royal palms.
So they did remove a number of large royal palms without permission. So they came in with their landscape architect and presented a plan to the ARPB that was approved. What is required is that you replace it with a reasonable replacement tree. So when the ARPB reviewed the plans, I guess there was a finding that whatever was proposed as a replacement was reasonable. So given those comments, I mean, we can certainly guide applicants to I mean, we're talking about a number of large royal palms, and like Mr. Lyon says, coconut palms not really comparable. I mean, these were very, very large. I mean, bucket truck kind of tree removal kind of trees.
Yeah, I mean, I actually pull up a view of the house because it was sold about this time last year, a little earlier. And I mean, one of the prominent features of that house were those royal palms. And you walk down Polo Drive and they're not there anymore. And I just think that, I mean, I understand that they were close to part of the house. But here's my bottom line recommendation. I think we should change the code where they have to replace something that is clearly the same. Now, same as, I'll leave it to the lawyers to figure what same is, but a royal palm, you're not going to make them put up a 60-foot royal palm, but they could put up a royal palm that's 40 feet. And I think they're putting in 12-foot coconuts. I mean, that's,
It's more than that. I mean, we have a code, and you are not allowed to remove
but they
like
just
that
do it.
without a permit, and that's where it would be stuck. Here, it was done without a permit. They just cut them down. And therefore, I'm kind of surprised it would go to the ARPB for an alternate landscaping presentation. My understanding is that it would be royal palms put back up because they took them down without approval.
What happened when those, on my street, they just come and cut down all the royal palms when they were building that house, remember that?
And we put them,
And they put them back. I mean, they weren't huge, but they are growing.
Yeah,
They're
right.
fine, but they made them put them back because they were huge. So I don't,
is there anything we can do at this point on that particular situation? I'm not going to be loved by my neighbor, but
No, I mean, I won't say no, but I mean, probably not because they went through an approval and it was approved by the ARPB.
can we think of a protocol now that this doesn't happen again?
I mean,
I think the direction from the commission is if a tree is taken down without permit, then it must be replaced
by the same
same
species.
tree. I mean, isn't this what happened with Delray Garden as well? Where Anthony found that they had removed a tree without a very large.
They did, but they came in with a very healthy landscape plan. And we made them go before the
Right.
ARPB because of, I mean, that's what the code requires.
there are some people that don't know what they're doing. I mean, they just come in, they think, oh, I can cut it down because I've had conversations with people and they go, oh, you mean I need approval? I need a permit? So I think maybe to remind people in a newsletter too, on a friendly basis
Right.
for the residents, because they really, I'm not saying everyone, but there
understand.
are people who really just don't know.
Right.
And they don't mean
But-
to be,
But of course, the contractors probably know, but they don't care.
well, okay.
Because they're not held accountable.
Right.
Maybe we should figure that out.
I mean,
There you
we've,
go.
Greg and I,
That's a start.
Yeah.
Greg and I have talked about increasing the amount that we can charge. I think we do 2 times right now, Rebecca?
We charge
3
$500.
times? I mean, we do
Yeah,
4
the fine is
times.
How about the value of the removed tree?
Well,
Yeah.
That particular one's not going to have any kind of punitive financial cost to it because it doesn't technically right now necessarily meet the requirements to have a landscaping permit pulled at Delray Beach. So there's no way that other than making them come before the ARPB,
There's
no
no fee.
fee. There's no fee for that.
I would look at that again because I looked at it last night. And in that particular section, it talks about things you can and can't do. In the preamble, it said that if you violate that you can't do, that it would be subject to the penalties in section blah, blah, blah. And it was $500. mean, that doesn't,
Second.
it doesn't make any difference, but if we want to, I'm not interested in penalties, I'm interested in repairing what was the damage done and bring it back to where it was. I think that's the consequence.
Yeah, but if the fine is the value of the tree, then it becomes a negotiating issue where maybe they don't put a 60-foot one back, but they do replace it with a royal palm, something comparable that gets approved.
Well, what I'd like to do then is amend our language in the code that makes it very specific to that point. Because right now it uses the word reasonable. So,
I mean, and the problem is that the language reasonable is only in a level 1 review. So when I was looking at that, when we were at the ARPB meeting, I couldn't tell them, well, hey, listen, guys, this has to be reasonable. It needs to be 1 for 1. I mean, it's really just applying our landscape guidelines. So what Greg and I can do is we can look at the tree, since we're talking about removal of trees, we can look at our tree removal permit section and see if we can beef up that language to make sure that what was originally approved on a level 2 or level 3 as part of a overall landscaping approval is maintained as much as possible, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's, I'm not smart enough to understand what you said. What I do understand is that if it gets removed, it's got to be put back. Okay, so to be sure it says that.
Yes, sir. All right.
Sorry.
All right, good. Well, good points, Paul. Thank you for bringing them up.
and I agree with Mrs. Orthwine, it's an education process, but that's not the only code that we have to educate people.
Can we talk
We're gonna mail it out.
other things?
Yeah.
Anyone else? Any other comments? If not, thank you all for coming. Meeting's adjourned.
Thank you. That'd been all day conversation.